This is our crowdfunding comics panel, and our moderator is 10 minutes away. So we're going to wing it until he gets here. But Meg has something to say, she said. So this is the darling Meg. Hello, Meg. So, show your shoes.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Wow.
I'm Meg from the programming department here at Comic-Con with a special announcement from our department. I'm so happy to be here with all of you to celebrate the career and achievements of Billy. And I don't want to give too much away since you already know a lot about him, but in honor of everything that he's done, his wonderful Samurai Fable She, and his historic storytelling style in A Child is Born, we have a special surprise for him. And on behalf of Comic-Con and its board of directors,
I know.
I have an ink pot! Come on in, Holly.
And just to tell you guys what kind of guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Holly Frazetta. This is Frank Frazetta's daughter. And his granddaughter, Sarah.
Hold on, shut up. Just to tell you what kind of guy Billy is.
This is not my
He was given a panel for spotlight on Billy on his career, and he gave it up for crowdfunding comics. So that's the spirit of the comics.
Of Billy's creation, She, 25th anniversary. Let's give it up.
I don't know what to say. Okay, guys. All right. So, thank you. Wow. This is fantastic. Incredible. I'm trying to delay for our moderator. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming. We decided, yes, it was a panel that they wanted to do a spotlight panel on me. And as Jimmy said, I do enough talking for all of us. But I'd love to introduce some friends of mine, really good friends of mine, hugely successful people who have done their own crowdfunded comic books. And it's this wonderful new thing that's happening in comics. And it reminds me, Brian, of when we started in the 90s. It's this spirit of adventure, this spirit of independence, that anyone can make a comic book, and if you go through the right channels, and if you have a good product, and if you do diligence, and if you market yourself, and if you put out, and you write, and you ship it, and you do everything like that, you can become your own comic book entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And these fine gentlemen right here are a testament to that. And I've known them all for over 20 years, 25 years. Stephen Peros, my friend right here, I've known him since the first day of school of 7th grade. Oh, yeah. and Doug TenNapel, I met Doug when I first broke into comics too, but I'm going to introduce them and maybe they could say a little thing about themselves. So ladies and gentlemen, our first guest is the gentle giant, Mr. Doug TenNapel. And Doug is a creator of the video game Earthworm Jim. And yeah, there you go. And he also had a hugely successful crowdfunded comic book on Indiegogo called Bigfoot Bill. And if you don't mind, let everyone, how did your Bigfoot Bill do?
Sure. Bigfoot Bill was my first. It's another independent character, but it was an unknown character. So I launched it with my Indiegogo campaign, and we raised $196,000 from 33 contacts.
Wow! What Doug has done is that Doug has brought back Earthworm Jim to the graphic novel. And if Doug, you don't mind telling us the astonishing number that you did with Earthworm Jim, where you're at now, with your crowdfunded campaign for that graphic novel.
We just broke the Indiegogo record for comic crowdfunding. It's at $747,000. We're about to crack $750,000. If you guys haven't backed Earthworm Jim, look up Earthworm Jim on Indiegogo.
one of the
I'd love to
backers
have
right
you.
here.
There you go, my people! Hey. And I brought my family. You guys help me pay rent, help with food in their mouths, and I appreciate that.
Happy to help. And next we have a friend of mine, Stephen Peros, who I did meet in 7th grade. He's probably the most talented person I've ever known in my life. Steve is a screenwriter up in Los Angeles. He's worked on a ton of films, and he decided that he's an amazing artist himself, but now he makes his living as a writer, and he decided to do a Kickstarter for his Stoker and Wells comic book, his graphic novel. And his very first one that he ever did, he has no comic book experience, he doesn't know anyone in the comic book industry, and maybe Steve, you want to tell a little bit about Stoker and Wells? And what you've done?
Well, very interesting to see a nice, interesting cross-section of people who use crowdfunding and get comic books out there in this group. I come from, I'm a published playwright, a screenwriter, I've worked in television, but I've always known people, largely through Billy, in the comic book industry. Well, I had written a screenplay, a feature screenplay, meant to be the first of a trilogy, called Stoker and Wells. And the idea was for sort of that audience who would maybe want to go see the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes or Pirates of the Caribbean, that kind of summer film that kids want to see, but the parents want to see as well, as ideally a little bit of wit and intelligence to it in a period setting. So I wrote this script and people really liked it. No one really pulled the trigger. So someone said, and it was essentially the concept is, what if a 20-something screw-up named H.G. Wells, divorced, couldn't hold down a job, which is who he was at that time, met a 40-something theater manager named Bram Stoker, and what if the two of them went on an adventure that led to the creative inspiration for both man's first major work, which was A Time Machine for Wells and Dracula for Bram Stoker. So I wrote this script thinking, oh, you know, these books, they're public domain. People like the script. You know, it would be great if it was based on some sort of IP. I'm like, IP? Isn't Dracula and Time Machine IP enough? But apparently it wasn't. So someone said, why don't you turn it into a graphic novel? And I thought, well, I've never done that before. So the best thing to be the dumbest person in the room. So I said, I went to Billy first, and Billy agreed to do the variant cover, Kickstarter exclusive variant cover for the Kickstarter campaign. We raised, sorry to say it, this kind of pales in comparison, $21,000. Well, we raised $21,000 in 2017 to do a 54-page book. But in the doing, we realized it's really a 94-page book, so it's taken longer, a couple extra costs. We can put it out for the money that we raised, but it will mean cutting some corners on other areas we don't want to cut. So right now, I have an active live Kickstarter campaign going on, raising a measly $9,700, which we're 25% raised already in the first week. And so, if any of you look up Stoker and Wells, hope you can see the great rewards, including Billy's variant cover. So I just put a great team together. Our editor, who is the moderator here, who's a little late. A wonderful artist, Barry Orkin, and I'm just learning a whole lot in the doing.
Thank you. Next is my friend who I like to refer to as I'm the kid brother he never wanted. And that is my friend Brian Pulido of Coffin Comics. I love to refer to as the king of Kickstarter.
I think it's Ted, or Doug.
There you go, sir.
I stole everything from your campaign.
He does, yeah. But Doug, you were a big. Brian was a big influence on you.
Absolutely. His book, Lady Death, I looked at how all his tiers were set up, and I really admired his business model because his fans are so, they come in on day one. And so that's the thing I'm trying to crack on my campaign. I'm trying to see, what does Pulido do? So we're always learning from each other's campaigns.
Yeah. And so now, Brian, you've been doing Kickstarters for 5 years.
I have. So I've done 15 Kickstarters. I fulfilled each one within 8 weeks of close. Cumulative, we've raised something in the domain of $2.6 million. Nice. Which is awesome. Thank you. We thank each and every one of you, because it is the fuel. The capital is the fuel to keep making the items, and you guys have seen, some of you have, some of you haven't, but it's enabled us to actually buy a building which we've turned into a distribution center, and we fulfill our stuff out of. We have a museum, we have a store, and it really is all thanks to you guys. I guess part of this panel will be to talk to you guys about the nuts and bolts, but to speak to what Doug is saying, he has referred, the idea of getting everybody in as soon as humanly possible is a marketing term referred to as the hockey puck effect. So you can actually search it out, and it really is the game. So trying to get as many eyeballs concentrated on you to create a peak marketing moment, and we're all about that. It really is the game. We could sidebar why that's particularly important. It's a sidebar conversation, but it really does predict sort of the future of your campaign, the hockey puck effect.
All right.
Speak of the devil. So, Coffin Comics is committed to one Kickstarter or some crowdfunding tool every quarter, and coming up next is on August 7th at 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, the 10th chapter in Lady Death's Undead Life, Lady Death Blasphemy Anthem. I cordially invite each and every one of you to back that campaign on that night at that time. And without further ado, back to you.
Thank you. And I'd like to go on now. There's someone that I like to refer to as one of my best friends, and someone who's just been, I've probably put up with more from me than anyone, is someone who I refer to as the godfather of crowdfunding comics, whom we all went to and we all learned from him, Mr. Jimmy Palmiotti.
The Inkpot Award is so well deserved for you. I just have to point that out because as somebody who's known you since you started in comics, Billy's made it his life to bring these books to all you guys, you know, and it's a really quick award. He got the award, they said a nice thing, but the weight of it is huge because I've seen him have, every career is a roller coaster. You know, you do great, you have this great book, nobody knows who you are for a couple of years, you come back with something, they sort of know who you are, you look familiar, and so on and so forth. And Billy's managed to do something which I always say is probably the most important thing. He's been able to connect with his audience. Every San Diego, you guys know, he's in that same spot. He's there, you know, and just always there greeting people, always saying hi. He remembers your faces. I don't know if you guys, anybody experienced that? Billy, go see him, right? Every time.
He's the official greeter of Comic-Con.
He is.
Right there.
He's
One of my first stop.
He's
I
right
need a
up
blue
front.
Walmart then.
Yeah, exactly. But he's also the guy that encourages his friends, you know. And in comics, a lot of times it's tough. We you know, we're up here talking about successes and stuff, but a lot of times it's tough, and we need cheerleaders all the time. And it's great to have the audience out there, but you need the close friends to really talk in your ear and say, you know, you should do this or we should do that. And he's been one of those guys I've always felt like I can just call anytime and bother him about completely anything, any crazy subject. It doesn't even matter if it comes. But I've always wanted, as you want with your friends, you always want your friends to be successful. And like I said, I've never had a hesitation going out of my way to make sure that I can help in every way. And that award is so deserved, buddy.
No.
You know? Yeah. And then there's crowdfunding comics.
Yeah.
So I've done 12. I actually, that's a mainstream guy. You guys may know I was doing Marvel Knights, I was doing all this other stuff, but I did creator-owned comics. Before that with the band, actually, Brian and Billy, we all had, at one point we had a booth in San Diego that I know the con was not very excited about. It didn't make it in the 50th anniversary book, probably for a reason.
Yeah.
Because we just caused chaos. Thank you. The next year,
Fire alarm lights, you had the drums, we used a fog machine on the floor.
Japanese taiko drummer.
yes, it was a full motorcycle just
Yeah, I
parked
had a
right in the middle of the thing.
my motorcycle riding around.
It was the most insane three coming together of companies, but they never wanted to see us do it again. So when Kickstarter came up, I was like, this is interesting. Like, so wait, the fans could actually like say yay and nay to an idea, and then if they like it, they'll back it. If they don't, they won't. I'm like, this is something I don't see, because when you work for Marvel in DC, it's the retailers, it's sure you guys vote, but I have no idea who the people are buying the things unless I go to cons, you know? And I thought, Kickstarter is cool. I'll actually get the name and addresses of everyone. and be able to hit them up every time I have a crazy idea and then see if they want to back it or they don't. And when I first did it, I got a lot of crap from people because they were like, well, you have money, you could just do it yourself. And then I would explain to them how much a book costs, how much it costs to print. And then I'd say, okay, Kickstarting is not for the weak, because once you pack 1,000 boxes and bring it to the post office, they don't like you there anymore. So I did a couple more, and I've been doing them ever since. And like I said, I'm so happy to be here because, yeah, I've had the, I talked to Brian and I talked to Billy, and then, I talked to Brian, and then he does it 400 times better than I ever did it. And I'm like, all right, I got a lot to learn still. So I'm glad on this panel because I feel I'm going to learn from these guys, but thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Jeff. And last but not least, of course, is our friend Mr. Brian Miller of Hi-Fi Color and Design. Most saintly creator in comics, most patient, most professional. He is colorist extraordinaire, but he's a painter. What?
I'm the best dressed.
And the best dressed, indeed. And what Brian has done is something different, is something similar to our panel, that we want to put together a panel for those that might want to learn about crowdfunding. Brian does crowdfunding books to teach. So he has the one book about how to color comics, things like Hi-Fi. It's an amazing book. So Brian, if you want to talk about yourself a little bit. And Brian's got to jet out because they double booked him on panels. But
yeah, so if you see me leave early, it's not because I don't like these guys. I love these guys. I met Billy and Brian and Jimmy in the 90s, and I kind of feel like they're my older brothers who've lifted me up over the years and given me chances to work on their books when I was just like a snot-nosed kid out of high school. So really appreciate everything they've done. And as I got into comics more and more, when I first started with digital coloring, a lot of people would be like, oh, it's a fad, it'll never catch on. Digital computers to color comic books. But then it sort of became a thing, and people were like, well, teach me, show me. And I can only, come to these conventions and do like an hour presentation, and then the next day they're like, oh, I forgot it all. So we decided to do a Kickstarter book in 2015 called Hi-Fi Color for Comics. And we did like about $36,000 and managed to get them all boxed and shipped, which was, the craziest, hardest part always. And I learned so much from you, Jimmy, watching your Kickstarters. And then we exchanged a few emails, and it was a terrifying process. And we can talk more about that. The terrifying parts as we go along here, but it was fun and it got done. And so then this last year, I got to be 1/3 of a member of a book called Thin Man Feet. Curated 50 stories about 50 women, and it was written by 50 different writers and 50 different artists, and so you can imagine all that went into that. And that book raised just under $100,000, and it was nominated for an Eisner last night. We didn't win, but it was an honor to be, nominated.
all right, so ladies and gentlemen, I take it over to our moderator, Mr. J.C. Vaughn.
The pleasure of working over my career with everybody but you, Doug. And so we'll have to change that. We'll fix that. And if you guys came to learn something from crowdfunding, this is the all-star panel. When Billy told me that he wanted to give up his spotlight panel and work to do this, I said, well, you know the guys you got to call. And he called and they all came. And we cover a wide range of experience here, both with the creative and business disciplines, but every one of them has something to say that you can learn from. I know nothing about the technical side of coloring other than what I've read in Brian's book, and yet I now know enough to talk to my colorists. It's an amazing, amazing thing to witness these guys. Brian has turned this into an art form. You certainly have had your success. And so I'm going to ask everybody sort of the same questions, because I imagine you guys have different takes on all of them.
Before you do, I want my ink.
Yeah, give him that statue, yeah. Give me that thing.
put that up there.
I've been friends with Billy for a very long time. Is there anybody in this room who thinks he didn't deserve that award?
Oh, that's a son, folks.
That's his son.
Very nice. Very nice.
We have to do better to get that award.
You're grounded.
All right. First question. We'll start with you, Doug.
Sure.
Who did you learn from and what did you learn from them before you did your first Kickstarter?
I did my first Kickstarter on, I did a collection of all my sketches called the Sketchbook Archives. I was kind of shown the ropes by a guy named Jason Brubaker, who does Sithra and Remind, and he said, this is how you do a tier, and I walked him through the first Kickstarter, and based on that, I was able to raise $105,000 on my first Kickstarter. This is my fifth one, and but what I learned the most from these guys. So I would always check out what Brian was doing. I'd always go through his tiers and look at the timing, the idea of stacking multiple books and offering your back library. I'm trying to learn how to narrow my campaign time because he's down short and I'm running mine for like 8 months to get all the funding in. So I just learned from other campaigns. The Icarus in the Sun is the campaign that I beat, and that one was at 596,000. And just looking at the elegance and the beauty of the design of that front page, very simple. Even how he gathered his crowd, like he had 2.5 million Instagram followers, and I only have 6,000. But I've got 12. Over this last year, I've gone from 1,000 to 12,000 YouTube subscribers, and so it really is the social media side. I go on Billy's show when he started crowdfunding comics. I just start going on other people's shows. What Brian mentioned about the launch time, that is the hardest thing to get out there, is to communicate to people who want your book. They don't know it exists because they can't find anything on the internet. So getting just that link in front of everyone's face.
Finding that way to stand out among everything else out there on the internet.
Was the biggest thing I learned. But the other thing was I've done 10 graphic novels with Image and 6 through Scholastic. So I kind of knew the amount of time it would take to do the book. And another thing that I do, which is why I leave my campaigns open so long, is I do live streaming where I just point the camera down at my art desk and I live draw pages.
You get a lot of views on that?
I do. It's maybe 1,000 views, but it's why I do original pages, and then people see that page and go, oh, I want to buy that page. And I go, oh, there's a tier with an original page, and those go for $9.50 a piece. So that bumps a lot of the crowdfunding up by putting on a show of actually doing it live, helps bring people.
That's phenomenal. Steve, you come at this a little different. You're coming from a background as a successful screenwriter, but you're far from alien to comics, having grown up with Billy Tucci and Barry Orkin.
And Godzilla, apparently. Yeah, of course.
So, I can honestly say that's never happened in any of my other panels.
Don't eat the enchiladas.
But what did you study before you came in with your first Kickstarter?
Well, I don't have a fan base the way comic book creators have. So I did a lot of research. I had been a part of. Well, I did run once a campaign for a short film. So I saw what happened. I saw basically you shut down your life for 30 days. You have to do not do this. Do not leap into Kickstarter unless you're ready. Unless you're ready to. Go out there, but what I found, I did a lot. I watched a lot of tutorials. I watched a lot of things that worked, things that didn't work. Realized that you had to be, have dignity, be self-effacing, have a good sense of humor, and be gracious and thank people. But I found that the number one thing I learned was you have to have one-on-one contact. You have to find ways to reach out to people directly and not rely 100% on social media, because I found that the majority of my, I would find pledges when I would reach out to people directly, and as well as take advantage of every situation that presents itself to you for 30 days. Like, for example, if I happen to be, theoretically, running a Kickstarter campaign at the very moment that we're sitting here, yes, I think I'm the only one who's actually running one, as we're sitting here, I might in theory say to you that for anybody who was to pledge $35 or more, what's this under me? Oh, I know, that as a Comic-Con exclusive, remember dignity, a Comic-Con exclusive, individually numbered and signed by the artist, along with all the other rewards that you would get, including the book delivered to your door free of charge. You would get this, one of 50, numbered and signed by the artist, shipped to me as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive that I would loiter out here pathetically and hand you once I saw that you had pledged, or at Billy's booth. Yes, that's
If you were to
theoretically.
be so crass as to do
Yes,
that.
if I were so crass as to do this. But of course, for anybody who just donated at the $5 level, I would give you one of these signed, these Stoker and Wells postcards signed by myself. That's just the kind of thing you might do if you would stoop to the level that I just did.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it.
This is, by the way, it's called Stoker and Wells, 2 men. This is our female lead. This is Nina, an Eloy warrior from, anyone who's familiar with the Time Machine will know that, signed and numbered, individually numbered.
But not signed by her.
And only available here
Yeah,
at
not
San
an
Diego
actual
Comic-Con to people who contribute to the Kickstarter.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes.
Brian, I've got a question for you, because a lot of us think of you as the model of success and the customer service and everything else like this that goes with this. The Lady Death fans are pretty legendary. And I think the best quote I heard was Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios saying, "I want to be sworn to the black and I don't know what it means." But because you have really taken your connection with your fans to the proverbial next level, I want to know, were you scared doing the first one?
Yeah, so, look, I got the heavy metal, the vest, the da-da-da, but I gotta tell you guys, before the first Kickstarter launch, I really was a wreck, sorry to say, a bit of a tendency of getting nervous about these things. And I wanna acknowledge and thank Jimmy, who was on the speed dial. When I'm trying to figure it out and put it together, I call the mayor, the godfather. We all know, like you guys don't know, but we all know this is the godfather.
Here, here.
I call up the consigliere, and I say, I asked him a couple real simple questions. The first one I remember asking is, should I have it all done, yes or no? You said yes, et cetera, et cetera. So Jimmy gave me like that temporary feeling of confidence that would allow me to give it the shot. And so absolutely, the bad news is, like, we're about to launch the 16th, and I tend to still get that way. But I guess what I realize over time is my message for all of you guys and gals, wherever you are with your crowdfunding, is your first time, is your 5th time, it's failed, it hasn't, is if you're scared, if you're nervous, I say still do it. So I've learned to kind of deal with my tendencies, but still keep.
Don't you think that nervousness, when you channel it the right direction, that's your attention to detail?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. So this is what's going on in my mind. I want to avoid giving myself anxiety, so I try to plan my way out of it every time.
That's it. That's really good. When you had the first success with it, did you feel like, other than Jimmy, have you looked at any other successful campaigns that influenced you?
You bet. Thank you for that question. So I'm obsessed with studying all crowdfunding campaigns. I know all of yours. And we, after every campaign or before we retool, we have a small committee and we behave like we've never seen this stuff before. And we try to absorb it again. And then I guess the other trick that we use is we look at other fields. And we look at how other fields platform their products in today's economy. So for example, we look at the record industry, we look at how limited edition clothing brands and sneaker brands bring things out, and so we try to take a look at it in other areas. Like, even that speaks to like how I view comics is I've always seen us as a rock and roll band, and we always got to take it out on the road. So I'm not like jumping into or buying into how it's supposed to be done, sort of the stuff that feels good. So I mean, if there's a lesson in that, there's no shame in our game. We'll, after every campaign, before every campaign, retool, look at it again, look at it with a fresh set of eyes, see what the trends are, And I think that because, speaking for myself, 27 years in the game, and as Jimmy mentioned, with the ups and the downs, the tremendous roller coasters. I've been at the very pinnacle. I've been truly at the very bottom. Pitchforks at me. What I kind of realize is the only thing you could actually count on is change. So I'm really ready for it to change on a dime, and I'd assert you'd want to be too.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
Jimmy? Jimmy, Brian called you the mayor, and we all.
I'd like to plead the fifth.
Listen, I can flat out tell you, when I've been doing a Kickstarter, and my partners and I, whoever my artist is on the particular project or whatever, if we see a pledge pop up from Jimmy, we all go, we're gonna make it. And Jimmy has been really forthcoming with lots of information, lots of advice, and truthfully, everybody I've talked to on the panel previously has been too, and you'll find that there's a real spirit of cooperation, even though we're competing in theory. But everybody wants to get the best stuff out there. Jimmy, when you were starting your first one, because you've been a big influencer on all of us, who influenced you?
Yeah, so I actually read it was a New York Times article about Kickstarter. And I was curious, and I went on it, and I just started looking around, and I just started thinking, well, if I was going to do this, how would it work for me? Because as much as I was looking at everybody else's campaigns, I realized that, well, I can never do that, I can't offer that, or, I can get Amanda to do that, that's great, I'm going to use Amanda as much as I can. Thank you, sweetheart.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Amanda Palmer.
And my first one was a book called Queen Crab. So it was like a thing I did, I put together before I knew I was going to have it published. I just paid for it out of my pocket. And I was like, I don't know who's going to buy this thing. And then I looked at the campaigns. I said, okay, so this is like, if people like it, they're going to buy it. And if they don't, they're not going to back it, So at the core, no matter what you give away or add on, the core selling point is what the book is actually about. Obviously, you're buying a book. If you're just buying print or art, then you can just buy a print or art on a dealer's page. So, and then I started backing a lot of Kickstarters and seeing how I was getting the packages coming to me. So I backed so many. I backed my friends, I backed everyone. And I started to see, this guy's late, and this guy, thing came bent, and this was a good one. Why was it good? And slowed each one down and see why I was attracted to even backing it. Like, what was it on their page that made me back it? So I did like all that stuff. The common sense thing. We go on Amazon, we know right away there's 800 of the same product, but something goes that way. And it was the same thing with the Kickstarters for me. I was looking at them, and then I said, okay, well, the worst I can do is fail. So why not try it? And it's pretty much been a theme in my career, because people always remember your successes, but man, I got a little house of successes, and I got like a city of failures, right? And but people just look at the house, and they say, so when I did it, I didn't have to raise that much, but I realized, okay, now what do I do? Now I got to ship all these, and then I said, well,